hopefully, at the evidence.
And I think we also have to have confidence in our seniors, the ones we care for, their ability to adapt to these new technologies. I know I went through this with my late mother-in-law. When she found out that she could get recipes from the Food Network, that drew her to the computer. It wasn't grandchildren's photos.
Right.
It was, oh, I can find new ways to cook. Well, there are new ways to find exercise programs or questions you might ask your doctor.
Absolutely. Health information is something we talk a lot about and plan to talk about on these segments, because we want to direct people to reliable sources of information.
Right.
There's misinformation and great information on the internet.
Right. Well, let's give our viewers an idea of exactly what Dr. Kaiser is doing for you. So this is now, it's called Patient Empowerment Program?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
PEP. Here's a sample of what we're up to.
Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Kaiser, board-certified family physician and specialist in geriatric medicine. Welcome to The Empowered Patient. We have a very special guest today, Fran Phillips. So now for our viewers at home, grab a pen, grab a pad of paper, because Fran's going to give us some great tips how to make the most out of your healthcare visit, not to be afraid to get a second opinion when you need it, knowing that you're the boss in what you need to do. So get that pen and get ready to write down some great tips from Fran here and get the most out of your health. Tips that could help you live longer and better. How you doing, Fran?
Fine, thank you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So tell me, Fran, what is it that you think seniors need to know about taking charge of their health and being more active in their health care?
Always go for a second opinion, sometimes a third. Some of my friends say, oh, you may hurt the doctor's feelings. Has nothing to do with it.
I hear that all the time. I mean, we're not talking about a car with some minor body work here. I mean, this is our health.
Well, I even go get car opinions on cars. So certainly I'm going to take care of myself and my husband.
Your health. Right. Tell us about that experience of getting a second opinion and even a third.
Well, Jerry went to a doctor and he said, you need another angioplasty on your leg. And Jerry went to his rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist called Jerry one night and said, I've called that doctor twice and hasn't returned my call. And he wanted to discuss the problem with the doctor who suggested the angioplasty. And I went to see that doctor on Monday, and he said, well, what does he want to talk to me about? I said, well, why don't you call and find out? And I said to Jerry, we're not going to use this doctor. You don't have to go under anesthesia for nothing.
So when you found that this doctor was unresponsive, you were disappointed, and that brought up a red flag, that this doctor wouldn't communicate with your other doctor, wasn't responsive.
Right.
So what did you do?
I asked who was the top vascular doctor in the city. I went to see him with Jerry, and he said, you do not need an operation.
So then you went to a second doctor, and this doctor had talked with your primary doctor, reviewed the records, went through all the information. Then you sat down together and were able to make an informed decision.
Yes, and they all agreed Jerry did not need an operation.
And you were insistent on getting a second opinion.
Right.
Absolutely.
You have to do that. And if you don't, you're making a very big mistake for yourself.
So, Fran, tell me, what did you get out of reading this booklet, Talking with Your Doctor?
You'll have to excuse me, but it comes with age. Summary: making decisions with your doctor. Ask about different treatments. Are there any risks associated with the treatment? How soon should treatment start? How long will it last? Are there other treatments available? How much will the treatment cost? Will my insurance cover it? Ask about prevention.
We have to think about prevention as an option. And these are all ways that we can be more active in our own health care, take charge of our health such that we can have better outcomes and really live longer and better.
Well, like exercise is very important. I walk up to 5 miles a day, and that has done a great deal for me because I have scoliosis. And the doctor said to me, who's known me all my life, said, I thought you would be in a wheelchair by now.
And Fran, thanks so much for bringing up exercise. We can't talk about that enough on this show. We're going to have to do future segments on physical activity. Absolutely, staying active is a critical part of healthy aging. Fran, thank you so much for joining us on The Empowered Patient.
It's
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser. You're doing a wonderful job, and really, read this book, Talk with Your Doctor. It is so important for your health, and it is free. So make the call. It's important.
I'm empowered, and I'm taking charge of my health.
Wasn't that terrific? Dr. Kaiser, that's wonderful. You're showing us how the media can be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, we're really, this is trying to be a team approach. We're doing it together, and that's why I really like getting out into the senior centers, getting out into the community, and I'm looking for people who want to participate in this project.
Oh, I'm so glad you're participating. But stay tuned. We'll be right back and continue this conversation with Dr. Scott Kaiser.
You know, I am getting better. I can still take care of myself. You just don't know.
No. 3 times a day. These drops.
Now that Mom's moved in, life has become a bit more complicated for all of us. We knew there would be challenges, but overall, we're glad to be together.
I don't like to call him in the office when I have to go to the doctor's or if I want to go out.
We're so thankful for the help we received.
Hey, buddy. I hope that's not what I think it is. Don't you know using fireworks can result in severe injuries, burns, or even death? Even sparklers can reach temperatures of 1,200 degrees. I wouldn't do that.
Hey, buddy, the ball call!
Attend a public fireworks show and leave fireworks to professionals.
One of the most dreaded conversations along the aging journey is when we have to talk about whether or not we can continue to live independently. This is a challenge for couples. It's a challenge for the individuals who have to face it. It's especially a challenge between middle-aged adults and their aging parents. What people most often do with this is one of two things. They either avoid it altogether and don't talk about it until it's a crisis, or they have very cranky conversations, or what we call a conversation gone bad about the issue. It's so common that when we do workshops, we actually diagram this type of a conversation. And I want to share with you a little bit about this scenario. So this is a scenario. It's a diagram of a conversation. This is a mom talking down here, and I know you can't read it. I'm going to read some of it to you. And her daughter. And mom and dad are living at home. They're in their mid-80s, and they're about to lose their helper who's been coming in a couple of times a week for several years. And the daughter is quite concerned about this. So here's what happens. Maybe this is familiar. The daughter, Karen, walks in the door into Mom's kitchen after work and says, "Mom, you know, Claudia's leaving on February 1st. You really need to do something about this. In fact, we have to figure out where we're going to move you and Dad." "What? You got to be kidding me. We're not moving. We just need somebody else to come in a couple of days a week. We're fine." "I don't think so. Dad's getting frail. You fell recently. Besides, he can't hear. And if you fell again and you yelled, he wouldn't even know that you need help. Mom, you're not safe here. We're moving you." "Karen, honey, we've lived here for 40 years. We're not moving. Back off." "But Mom, you are not safe. If you fall again..." "Sweetie, don't you need to go make dinner for your family?" This is a conversation gone bad, and more common than we would like. And if we could continue to see what happens at the end of the scene, you would see Karen huffing out, angry as can be, and Mom with tears. So this is what we want to avoid having happen. The answer here, if we want to unlock any of these very difficult issues that are hard to talk about, and we want to create a good conversation with somebody that we love, the first thing we have to do is attend to just that. How do I have a good conversation about the topic? One of the mistakes Karen made is she goes storming in there saying, "Mom, you're moving." That's not the way to go. If both women can simply take a moment and recognize that this is a touchy topic, it's a scary topic, It's one that requires patience and respect and empathy and consideration. So, for example, here's another way this could have gone. Let's say Karen, she needs to go over to her mother's house and she wants to talk about this. And as she's driving over there, she says to herself, wow, you know, I kind of have a knot in my stomach about this and I'm feeling antsy. And I imagine Mom and Dad are kind of uncomfortable about this. If she just thinks those things and takes a deep breath, she might walk in the door and say something very different. For instance, she might say, Mom, you know, Claudia's leaving on February 1st, right? She's been with the family for 5 years now. How are you and Dad feeling about that? And if Karen can start the conversation like that, there will be a completely different response. There's the recognition that it's difficult. There's the recognition that it's frightening. There's the shift into a more loving place. And if Karen can pull this off, and if Mom can pull this off, even though it's difficult, they can experience having a relationship fulfilled one conversation at a time.
Welcome back to Aging Well in LA. I hope you are as excited as we are by having Dr. Scott Kaiser with us, bringing us new information and a fresh face. I'm excited about the potential going forward. Aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we've been having such a fun time with this already. We've been getting out. We did a Talking with Your Doctor segment that many of the viewers might have seen. We did some segments promoting a booklet from the National Institute on Aging on physical activity and exercise.
Right.
So it's been fantastic.
Well, and it's wonderful they always say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and to be able to see a group of seniors actively engaged, doing healthy things, encourages those who may be sitting on the couch at home.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with what we're trying to progress into. I mean, what these segments are really supposed to be about is living longer and living better.
Yes.
We already know there are a lot more people living longer than ever. We're really trying to approach the question of how can we live better.
Yes.
And thanks to the generous support of the Hartford Foundation, we actually have an opportunity now where we really want to shoot some segments directly looking at physical activity and exercise in older adults, because that's an area where there's substantial evidence supporting the benefits in health and quality of life. So that's kind of my jargony look at it, you know, the health and quality of life of older adults. But
it's important. People have to understand that these things aren't just hatched on a rock someplace, that you have to work hard to get financial support and then to interest the people who produce programs like this and others, that you need to pay attention to this growing senior population.
Right. It's a force to be reckoned with, and I think I want to be part of that movement to give a voice and empower this group, and you know, I want to be a part of that. And what I think with this physical activity and exercise programming, what we have an opportunity to do is approach it in a really fresh, new way.
Right.
I mean, I think that this can have a feel of some real motion and activity and be full of a charged emotion to really get people excited.
Well,
that's our challenge.
That is a challenge. But there are lots of ways to take shortcuts. For example, in most of the larger retirement homes that I've been to and visited, music has played an important role in either getting people up to dance, which is a wonderful activity, but to remind them that those memory cells still work. You can remember the lyrics. You can remember where you were when you saw Tommy Dorsey's band, for example. So I hope music is part of that.
Yeah, no, and we've had some touching moments already with song on the program, and hope to have more. And we would love to incorporate music and really have something that's really live for people, you know?
Have you ever noticed how many times you see a musician, world-class musician, you go, that person's 85 years old and they can still play that piano. How is that possible?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but really, I mean, age is a number.
Yes.
And that's why, like, my specialty is looking at function and circumstance and goals. You know, so age is a number, you know, but let's look at how we can live better.
Scott, can you tell us about the UCLA fellowship program that you're involved with?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm doing a health services primary care research fellowship at UCLA, and this is really what's given me the opportunity. My clinical care, taking care of patients is first and foremost to me. but to be able to take a little time to really see out this vision of using media as a tool to get information, to mobilize people around aging and healthy aging issues. So it's really thanks to their support that I'm able to take the time to really focus on this and do this in a quality way. I'm surrounded by people thinking about health policy and quality of care, and they're really informing this project, mentorship and that kind of support. It's fantastic.
Thank you, UCLA. We have great resources in this city, and Hartford as well. I think it will be useful, too, to show caregivers and family members how they can encourage this process, identify perhaps an area of interest, and perhaps get in contact with you through the Department of Aging here in Los Angeles and say, look, what we did something positive.
Absolutely. I mean, this, it takes a village.
Yes.
And people say, oh, you're a young man. Aging is about everybody. We're all doing it, and it affects all of us, okay? So that's what we're trying to produce, content that everybody could enjoy and that could involve the whole family.
Right.
Because I don't think these things occur in isolation.
I agree with you.
That being said, we want to know people doing exciting things, particularly with these segments on physical activity and exercise.
Yes.
And that would be great if they could call in and tell us, and we could get out there and check it out and hopefully get them involved in guiding the process.
Well, I agree. And it's so important. If people have a new spark, they found a new kind of league or social setting where seniors really thrive, they can contact you. Dr. Scott Kaiser at the Department of Aging right here in Los Angeles. The number's on your screen. And we do want to hear from you. So looking ahead with the technology, is this going to help lower the potential costs of an aging population?
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of things that can improve quality and be cost saving. Absolutely. That's not my area of expertise, right. But that's something that we'll always be conscious of. That's just a reality in healthcare and society. Healthcare costs have gotten out of control.
Oh boy, have
so
they.
There's no question that promoting health and fitness through physical activity and exercise can be cost saving, but that's really not the focus.
Right.
We're really about quality,
about that.
and hopefully somebody else can pick up that piece of the puzzle. Right. For now, we just want to work with what's already out there. I mean, we have evidence-based programs that already exist in LA to promote physical wellness. To get people moving, and so we just want to get people moving and keep them moving, and do it together.
Well, we have had several shows about the danger of falls, for example, and how just simple fixes within the home can help prevent the beginning of the health problem for people.
Right.
Many times it's a broken hip, tripping over a cord that should have been tucked away.
Right. Once again, you hit the nail on the head because, as a geriatrician, I spent a large portion of my training was specifically dedicated to helping care for people who had hip fractures.
Right.
And the great news is there are treatments that are very effective, and the surgery is getting better and better, the surgical medical management during surgery. But that's something that's preventable.
Yes.
And you're right on the money because there are already evidence-based programs. There's Matter of Balance. It's available. It's in our city. And that's the kind of thing where we want to see who's offering that program, showcase it, get people involved. They teach you those things about how to modify your home environment, how to assess your own risk, how to strengthen to reduce your risk of fall. And it's never too late to build more muscle.
Well, that's an important consideration. It is not too late. I am so excited that you were part of this program, and we'll be bringing important information to our viewers and the caregivers and family members who need to educate themselves as well. Dr. Scott Kaiser, thank you so much for coming in and sharing a bit of your background. It's important for people to know the Department of Aging is filled with people who, like Scott, are dedicated to the affairs of seniors. I've really enjoyed this visit, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Aging Well in LA.
Bulky item pickup? Call 311, the toll-free number for non-emergency services. 311, your one call to City Hall.
Driver, over here. Sir, remove your shoes. Sir, remove your shoes and stand here. You have to focus when crossing a street. Every day, pedestrians are seriously injured or even killed because they're not paying attention when they cross, or because drivers fail to yield. A pedestrian always has the right of way. Pay attention, obey the law, or deal with the consequences.
Look before you cross. Cars can't see you.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
3 members present. Mr. Carter, Ms. Perry, Mr. Ryan. Today is Tuesday, October 25th, 2011. We have 3 members present in chambers. It is 10:05 a.m. in the morning. We need to get to 10 to begin the meeting. So anybody who is within earshot, please come to chambers. There are seats on the desk from Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Levon, Mr. Zine, and Mr. Bueller for the seats to leave at 11 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Huizar is here. We're 4 now. Mr. Garcetti, Mr. Wesson. We're 7 members. Mr. Englander is here.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 25th, 2011. We're here in the John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall. We meet here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. And I want to welcome especially our guests who are here in Council Chambers. We'll be turning to many of you shortly. Those are here for the nonprofit day and other guests who are with us today in Council Chambers. You have 6 different ways of following your City Council in action. One is live in person here in the John Ferraro Council Chambers. 2 is if you live closer to Van Nuys or San Pedro, you can always avail yourselves of those facilities closer to where you may live and not only follow our council meetings but testify remotely from Van Nuys or San Pedro. 3, you can watch us on Channel 35 throughout the city's cable system, which broadcasts each of these meetings live and rebroadcast them in the evening for your convenience. 4th, you can you can go to your computer and watch on live streaming webcasts of these council meetings at lacity.org, and we also archived all of our past council meetings for your convenience. Also online are our agendas, and any supporting materials that council members receive for the items that we vote on are available for the general public as well. And then finally, if you can't come here in person, you're not close to a television or a computer, you can always just use your trusty phone and call the following number to listen to the council meetings. That's 213-621-CITY. That's 213-621-CITY. Service called Council Phone, and you can also use that to listen into any of our committee meetings as well, which are also archived audio online for your convenience. We do have 10 members of our 15-member, or usually 15-member body. We are down 1 at 14 right now with a vacancy in Council District 15, but that does constitute a quorum, and with that we can begin our meeting. So, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll, and we'll bring the meeting to order.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Huizar, Carrasco, Corian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Weston, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right. Mr. Parks moves and Ms. Perry seconds. Without objection, Those minutes will be approved. Next order of business.
Community resolutions for approval.
All right, Mr. Huizar moves and Mr. Alarcon seconds. Without objection, those will be approved as well. If we can run through today's agenda, and the agenda is split into...
Excuse me,
items.
Mr. President, today is Tuesday. Would I do the flag
Oh, yes,
salute?
please. Before we start with the agenda, if I can ask everybody in council chambers to please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Huizar, will you lead us in salute to the flag, please?
Yes, everyone, please stand in the chambers. Put your hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huizar. And thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. And if we can now go through the agenda, and colleagues, any items you wish to call special on today's agenda, if you could please direct your attention. These are split into items that are noticed for public hearing and those for which public hearings have not yet been held. Any items that have already had a public hearing require council to reopen that public hearing, but any items that have not yet received a public hearing, a card from the public, will automatically trigger that. Cards are available for the public in the back for both individual items as well as for our general public comment, which is for items not on today's agenda but under our jurisdiction. First items, please.
Items 1 and 2 are Department of Building and Safety liens noticed for public hearing.
Okay. Do we have any cards on those?
No cards.
Okay. We'll close the hearings on those. And anybody wishing to call one or two special? Yes, Mr. Koretz. Item 1 special. He's over in Mr. Weston's seat for our controllers over in Channel 35. All right. We'll call that special for Mr. Koretz. Anybody wishing to call 2 special? Yes, Mr. Reyes. Number 2? Okay. We'll call both of those special.
Continue for 30 days.
Continue for 30 days. All right. If there's no objection, we'll continue that. 30 days will take us to November 25th, which is that a holiday, Madam Clerk?
Yes, so it would be November 29th.
November 29th. Is that all right, Mr. Reyes? It'll take us a little over 30 days? Okay. We'll continue that till the 29th then. Next items, please.
Items 3 through 8 are items for which public hearings have been held. For item number 5, a motion is required as in as much as recognition number 4 of the housing report is submitted with that recommendation.
Okay. Any specials, colleagues? Items 3 through 8. Yes, Mr. Parks?
Number 5.
Number 5, Mr. Parks. Are there specials? If not, let's go ahead and take up the balance. Items 3 and 4 and 6 through 8. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 9 through 22 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes required for consideration. For item number 9, no action is required inasmuch as the CAO has stated that there will be no bond sale today.
Okay. All right. Do we have any cards on any of these items?
Cards on 21 and 9.
Okay.
And 18.
We'll call that special for cards from the public, and I will call 21 special. And any other special? We'll close the public hearings. Yes, Mr. Parks?
Can I just have the clerk repeat what she said about number 9?
Number 9 there's no action required. There will be no sale of bonds today.
Okay, so we're just continuing it, or?
Technically, you don't continue it either. You just take no action.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Any other specials? 10 through 17 and 19, 20, and 22. Seeing no specials from any other members, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right. Those are approved. If we can send 6 forthwith, please. There's no objection to that. We will now move to our general public comment. And then we will come back to items called special. Oh, I'm sorry. We've had a request to take item 21 just before the public comment, so we'll take that first. We do have some cards on this. So Dr. Tom Williams, if you'd like to come forward on item 21 first, and then Arnold Sachs will follow.
Dr. Tom Williams, El Sereno, LA 32 Neighborhood Council. Why am I here on this one? Nonprofits. Nonprofits are a very important element within the city. However, many of them are used as slush funds. Many of them are used for their own personal services. One of the few nonprofits that has had a long-term relationship with the city of Los Angeles is the Southwest Museum in Highland Park. One of the questions is, what's happened to it? If you're going to honor nonprofits, honor the first museum in Los Angeles. It was a nonprofit for a long time. Now we do not know what's going to happen to the building and to its world-famous collection. We would like to have the city council members implement some of the things that were stated, that there would be a committee formed someday to deal with the Southwest Museum. Thank you.
Thank you. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. After that will be Hillary Sullivan.
Good morning. My name is Hillary Sullivan. I'm the Executive Director of the National Council of Jewish Women in Los Angeles. I want to thank the City Council for having nonprofit days. We appreciate the support. We appreciate you recognizing the work that each of us do every day to make this city better and help those that need help find the resources available to them. I would also like to announce that on December 4th, we are doing our annual clothing giveaway open to the whole city. We will have free clothing giveaway, so anybody is welcome. It begins at 8:30. Please let your constituents know that we are very happy to be able to help those right before the holidays for any kind of clothes and books that they need. Thank you, and a special thanks to our City Council member, Paul Koretz. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Arnold Sachs.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. Echoing Dr. Williams' comments, since you're having a nonprofit day, are you going to also have a for-profit day? You know, the for-profits that piggyback into nonprofits. Take, for example, the business improvement districts that are supposed to be run for nonprofits, but I believe in the Downtown Improvement Business District, the salaries range over 36% of the funds. And I believe there was a story that a good nonprofit, its salaries run about between 10 and 14% of the funds, maybe even less than that. So it's good to see that the business improvement districts are running, well, like 20% higher than the norm. In addition, I see a lot of people here from the LA Art Works. So I was wondering if you have anybody from AUG or the Ritz-Carlton who had their room tax waiver okayed by the City Council. One of the things that was vetted in the discussions in the LA Live, because I believe room tax, the city room tax fees are used to generate funds for nonprofits, especially art programs. So with these new hotels that are now opening in LA Live and the ones that expect to be constructed for the new arena, all those room tax fees that will not be generated will directly impact the art programs in the city of LA. So while you're congratulating yourselves, give yourselves a double pat on the back. Reach a little lower.
All right, let's applaud the pat on the back. Thank you very much. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to invite our mayor to come to the podium as well. We're very pleased to welcome the mayor. Colleagues, we had just a couple weeks ago Access LA Day with the Chamber does, and this is now our second year of bringing all the nonprofits in the city and opening up the city for a nonprofit day here in the city of Los Angeles. I want to thank the extraordinary individuals and organizations who are here today. This is something we started 2 years ago, and we've done in the field and we've also done here, where we open up the city to be able to collaborate, especially in these tough times, with the nonprofit organizations that are so critical to the quality of life here. Let me just say a few words, and then I'll ask the mayor as well to say some things, and then we'll hear from some of the people that are being served by 4 of the nonprofits represented here today. As we all know, that there's extremely tough economic times, and our community of nonprofits here in Los Angeles is needed now more than ever. And today, we're celebrating those important organizations, which provide services from foreclosure prevention to job training and placement, from after-school programs for young people to services for seniors, and so much more. The irony is that for these organizations is that in this economy, when the demand for their services has never been higher, that they're struggling to meet their bottom line. That's why partnerships are so critical. So today we're bringing together leaders from some of Los Angeles' nonprofit organizations to share their best practices, to share their war stories, to give them a forum to identify opportunities to collaborate better with each other and in serving our communities. And I want to thank all of you who are here for the work that you do to help Angelenos who share the common goal of better lives for themselves and their families. In my own council district this weekend, I went out with a nonprofit as we did a count of the homeless individuals that live in our district. We didn't just do a count, we did interviews. At 6 a.m. I was underneath the 101 freeway talking to a veteran who has been 20 years homeless, to be able to hear his story and to identify with people assisting the homeless path a way to get them into a continuum of services and off the street. This year, my office offered grant funding with nonprofits through neighborhood beautification projects, and we required each applicant to partner with a nonprofit in the district, in part because we know that these partnerships are not just multiplying, they're exponential in their effect. And I'm proud that we had 22 different Clean and Connected Communities grants with nonprofits that are working together with the community. I also wanted to share one other recent experience. When I walked out of my district office a few months ago, I met Carmen and her teenage son, who I remembered from a community meeting. She was just walking by. She wasn't coming to my office. We happened to run into each other on Hollywood Boulevard. And I asked her how she was doing. We were speaking in Spanish, and she said, "I'm not doing so well. I spent last night in a shelter with my son. I lost my job, and then I lost my apartment, and I need a place to stay close to where we used to live because my son needs to go back to school, his school, tomorrow." I referred them to the Youth Policy Institute, one of the many great nonprofits here today, to help them find housing. It wasn't easy, but she and her son are now living a stable and hopeful life in permanent housing, and he's back in school. It's his senior year, and it could have been tragedy where he was taken off course, a lost soul in the city, but instead through our nonprofits and the city working together, we're able to make sure that he's back on the path for success. I want to say to the nonprofits, I know what you do is not easy, especially in these tough times, but together I know we can do even better. Again, I want to thank you today for all the work that you do to make Los Angeles a better city, and I want to thank Bert Ball, who a few years ago said, why don't we have a nonprofit day? And this was the dream that we brought together. And I want to thank the mayor's office, the mayor who's been an extraordinary supporter of nonprofits, Eileen Adams, his great deputy mayor, working on those partnerships for the work that they've done. And I'd like to turn it over to the mayor to say some words to our nonprofit community as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa.
Thank you, Council President Garcetti. I want to thank you and the members of your staff for working with our Office of Strategic Partnerships to honor the nonprofit sector here in Los Angeles. I'm here this morning to declare the first nonprofit day in the city of Los Angeles. And on behalf of all Angelenos, I'm honored to officially recognize the vital role that nonprofits play in our city. You know, the idea came from, frankly, a couple of sources. One, we bring the chamber, the business groups come all the time, the for-profit groups, and we've never really recognized the nonprofit community that does so much for our city. And so when I was asked, I said, absolutely, we should do that. We should honor the men and women, 35,000 active nonprofit organizations in the city of Los Angeles. About 245,000 people work in those nonprofits. About 6% of the LA County workforce are working in those nonprofits. We forget that they generate about $35 billion in economic activity. So these are impressive numbers. But we didn't declare Nonprofit Day just because a set of significant statistics. We declared it because of the dedicated work of the men and women across the city. Men and women like the medical professionals who provide critical care to those who don't have regular access to a doctor or a dentist. Like the volunteers who are planting trees, cleaning streams, and tending to beautification efforts in our neighborhoods, like the men and women in classrooms, on stages, and in galleries teaching us to appreciate the beauty of a brushstroke and the drama of a gesture, like the men and women who Council President Garcetti talked about, who opened the doors at shelters and welcomed the homeless, the fearful, and the abused, like the advocates and analysts who are mining the data and sifting the research to develop the next generation of innovative policies and programs, like the men and women at foundation conference tables who provide the critical funding to launch the project that will change the world. And let me acknowledge them because in many ways, particularly in these tough times, it's been the nonprofits that we've gone to, the philanthropic organizations that we've gone to partner in so many efforts. I don't have to tell you that what we do with the nonprofit community, with Summer Night Lights as an example, one of the most successful programs that we have, with the partnership schools in the toughest areas in the city of Los Angeles. In so many areas, we're working with our nonprofit communities. And it's for these people that we're here today to honor their good work, to honor their imagination, their compassion. And we're also here to remind the rest of us what we can and should do. We should take the extra time and volunteer an hour or more a week. We can make an extra donation to these organizations that are providing critical services. Nonprofit Day is an important first step, but the city can and must do more to assist this important sector. Like other sectors, the nonprofit community have been hard hit by the recession, whether it's government funding or philanthropic donations. They've been as hard hit as any of the rest of us. The demand for their services at the same time has increased, oftentimes dramatically over the last few years. So even as revenues have dropped, we need to make the difference by volunteering, by supporting these organizations. We need to do everything we can to cut the bureaucratic hurdles and red tape and allow the nonprofits to do what they do best, help our fellow Angelenos make this a better and more caring city. I'd like to bring up a couple of the nonprofit organizations that are here with us, beginning with Peace Over Violence. I don't have to tell you that we're still in the month of October, the month when we're educating the public about domestic violence and the impact of domestic violence across our city. And with us is an organization that we work very closely with in that regard. Brittany Soto is here representing them. Brittany Soto, I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me here today. My name is Brittany Soto, and on my 21st birthday, I was raped by my best friend's husband. My first interaction with Peace Over Violence was in May 2009 when I went to give my statement to the detective on my case. When I arrived at the station, the detective had already called an advocate from Peace Over Violence to be present with me during my statement. The advocate explained her role, and I was relieved to have her there, along with such a compassionate detective. The advocate offered a great deal of support to my parents as well, in particular to my father, who was having an exceptionally hard time with what happened. My next interaction with Peace Over Violence was at the preliminary hearing, where the advocate met us at the courthouse and prepped us for the legal process. She gave a great deal of support and comfort to me and all of my many family members. Although the verdict was not in our favor, as it isn't in most sexual assault cases, I have never regretted reporting it and going through every step of the legal process. After my experience, I decided to become a volunteer on Peace Over Violence's 24-hour rape and battering hotline, and as a sexual assault response team advocate. I chose this because of what it meant for me to have an advocate supporting me and ensuring all of my rights were being upheld, especially during the scariest parts of the process. It changed my life. I was originally going to pursue a career in marketing after receiving my degree from the University of San Diego, but after what happened, I decided to shift and pursue a career of social service, and I made it a goal to get hired at Peace Over Violence. And I did. In August of this year, I was hired as a client advocate. So I went from client to volunteer to professional. I'm so grateful for the gift Peace Over Violence has given me. I feel honored and humbled to be part of such an influential and instrumental nonprofit. It is because of what I went through and the support I was given that I'm able to stand here today. not as a victim, but as a survivor, a thriver, and an advocate. Thank you.
Wow. I don't have to tell you, Council President Garcetti and I are there every year, and so are some of you. City Year is one of the great service organizations in our nation. I truly believe that every American ought to serve their country. They aren't forced to do so. They do so because they believe that as well. With us, representing City Year, and by the way, City Year is all over our city, particularly in the hardest hit areas, working with our most impacted kids, and are very much in the partnership schools in some of your districts. Help me in welcoming Leonela Medrano. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
Leonela.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me here. My name is Leonela Medrano, and I proudly serve with City Year. I was born in Los Angeles, and I'm a product of LAUSD. I attended Commonwealth Elementary, Virgil Middle School, and graduated from Belmont High School. After high school, I went on to UC Santa Barbara and became the first girl in my family to graduate.
That's cool.
My parents and my teachers were the reason for my success. I saw the dedication and passion they had for me to succeed, and they gave me the support I needed. Unfortunately, I saw firsthand that this is not the case for every student. City Year gave me the ability to go back to my community and serve at Virgil Middle School. Every day in Los Angeles, 210 core members like myself work in 17 LAUSD schools to stop the dropout crisis and get our students back on track and get them to graduate. In Virgil, my team and I, of 14 core members, work every day to be the consistent positive presence our students need. We're there to greet them in the morning by name. We're there to support them in their classes, stay with them after school, help them with their homework, while building strong personal relationships. I feel really lucky to work at Virgil because I know what they're going through. I literally sat in their seats. I see the difference I'm making already with Maria, one of the students I help. She struggles in math and is often too shy to ask for help. I was once that student myself, but I had someone there to make sure I didn't fall behind. That's why I give her the extra push she needs to know that I care about her success. If I keep encouraging her, I know we will see results. Thanks to last year's team at Virgil, 83% of our students improved their math score by at least 1 letter grade. My goal is for all students to believe in themselves as much as we believe in them. Thank you for supporting our work, and thank you for believing in our students.
And Leonela, we believe in you. With us as well, representing LA Goal is Petit Constantin. The executive director will speak with Lissy Yalowitz.
This is for you. Thank you. LA Goals Independent Living Skills Training Programs for adults with developmental disabilities are important. Just as important as educating the community about the abilities of people with disabilities. We hope to show the community that there is a magical reciprocity that happens when people with developmental disabilities include us in their lives and when we include them in ours. Lisa Yalowitz receives services at LA Goal, but more importantly, she is an artist, and she has a few words she'd like to share with you.
Thank you.
I'll hold it for you, honey.
Okay. We also create art at LA Gold. Our art has become the bridge that gives us increased self-esteem, the ability to talk to others, and the key to leading independent lives. We want to teach people that we are capable. Thank you.
You are not only capable, you are something else.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, sir.
You are not only capable, you are something else, a uniquely talented woman. Thank you so much. And with us is an organization no stranger to all of us, and particularly to Councilmember John Perry, the Downtown Women's Center, Addie Martinez.
The Downtown Women's Center has been in existence for the last 33 years, providing permanent supportive housing and support services to women living on the Skid Row. But this year, with the support of the city, the mayor, and our councilwoman Jan Peary, in December 2010, we were able to open up our new home. And as nonprofits, as economic developers, we invested $26 million into our community. Over the last 24 months, provided 640 construction jobs and added 34 permanent jobs to Los Angeles. And Addie Martinez is going to speak on how we continue to provide jobs.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very privileged to be here this morning. And it is because of the Downtown Women's Center that gave me my voice, that let me know that they cared about me and made me feel important. I trained in MAID by DWC, a cafe and gift shop, which was created to help break the cycle of poverty and chronic unemployment. After successfully going through the training where I was able to learn new skills and work on my self-esteem, I am now employed at Vaughn's in Hollywood. So do call me with your catering needs. This year, DWC will provide education and employment training to dozens of women. And I must say that the Downtown Women's Center is such an amazing place where there's such camaraderie and such support, not only from the employees, but from the community to the volunteers to the donations, and there's just so much oneness and unity. And I just feel very privileged to be a part of the Downtown Women's Center. Thank you very much for your support.
And I think I could say that the Downtown Women's Center feels very privileged to have you as well, Addie. Conservation Corps. Every single one of us around this horseshoe have worked with them, know that they do great work in reclaiming the lives of young people and giving them skills. And with us is Elizabeth Valerio, representing the Conservation Corps. Valerio?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Valerio. About 2 years ago, before joining the Corps, I wasn't really doing anything with my life. I had dropped out of Roosevelt High School, was wasting my time, and getting myself into trouble. And one day, I felt that I needed to make a change in my life and decided to join the LA Corps. During my time at the Corps, I gained many new skills to better the environment. One of the most important projects for me was when I went out to San Gabriel Mountains to plant new trees in a burnt area. It would be nice if 10 years from now I would get to go back and see the trees that I helped plant. I'm currently a full-time student at East LA College and working part-time for the LA Corps as a program assistant. I have left all the negative things in the past, and I'm only focusing on the positive ones, which are my family, work, and school. Thanks to the LA Conservation Corps, I have earned my high school diploma And with the support and motivation from staff, I believe I can achieve all my goals and someday transfer out to a UC and major in psychology. Thank you.
Yeah, Rough Rider. Yeah, that's right. Who said that? Brusado's in the house. I said, Lanit or Landlet. What is that? Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. We all know the great work of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, and Mr. Garcetti and I, and again, virtually all of you have worked with them over the years. They're doing great work reclaiming green space and open space in our city, revitalizing neighborhoods. With us is Joel Hernandez. Is it Joel or Joel? Joel.
Either way. The LA Neighborhood Land Trust was established in 2002 to build parks and community gardens in low-income, park-poor neighborhoods of Los Angeles. We believe that parks, playgrounds, and gardens contribute to the quality of life in this great city. They help make our communities strong, our residents healthy. The Land Trust not only helps build parks and gardens in low-income neighborhoods, but we help transform unlivable neighborhoods into vital communities with engaged residents by providing families green space, a place to play, to rest, to take aerobics or an art class, to gather with their neighbors and grow fresh food together. In 2007, the Land Trust came to my neighborhood with plans to build a skate park and worked with the community members there to get it all done. And I just started out there as an unemployed kid skateboarding every day, and now I'm the full-time skate park supervisor. I oversee everything on a day-to-day basis. And I think the reality of all this is that a lot of the wonderful, beautiful things that are happening in these communities because of nonprofits cannot be measured with statistics. There are beautiful friendships, places for these kids to go, gang prevention. And I just want to thank everybody here for the opportunity to speak and for your support of these nonprofit organizations. It really is a wonderful, beautiful thing. Thank you.
Joel Hernandez. I'd like to bring up no stranger to the nonprofit community, a great leader in the philanthropic community, Leonard Abbey, with the Annenberg Foundation, to say a few words and to make an announcement.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. President Garcetti, members of the City Council, I'm pleased to be here this morning. As the Mayor mentioned, my name is Len Abbey. I'm the Executive Director of the Annenberg Foundation, but I join you in chambers this morning really on behalf of my foundation colleagues and the broader nonprofit sector. As we've heard, there are over 2,000 grant-making foundations in our region and about 35,000 not-for-profit charitable organizations that form an indispensable part of the fabric of our community and the community at large. In a recent essay, Pamela Groh reminds us that approximately 83% of the nonprofit organizations across the country have operating budgets of less than $1 million, and the statistics for LA City and LA County are not that different. These are the very organizations that are operating within our communities, providing free health care to the uninsured, taking up the slack where public education falls short, feeding the hungry and homeless when no one else will, providing housing and support for abused women and children, enriching lives through the arts, providing legal assistance to those without a voice, and so much more. Teddy Roosevelt reminded us that far and away the best prize that life offers is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. Together, everybody in this council chamber this morning is working hard to make Los Angeles among the most livable, vibrant, and compassionate big cities in America, and that's a goal worth achieving. In The Art of Living, the authors remind us that philanthropy is not about right and wrong, but about doing right and right. Even in the worst economic climates in the recent history, charitable giving in the United States is projected to top $300 billion. The scale of that investment in community life is indeed impressive, but it's the impact of those dollars on everyday lives that inspires and energizes the nonprofit sector. Improving the experience of the individual, like the compelling stories that we've heard just this morning, is what motivates us to want to do even more. It's been said that teamwork is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results. Effective collaboration is absolutely the best way to leverage impacts and achieve higher outcomes. The nonprofit sector is delighted to have helped organize and participate in LA's first Nonprofit Day. Moreover, Mr. Mayor, the establishment and capable leadership of the Office of Strategic Partnerships has led to an increase in the exchange of information and ideas across the nonprofit sector, City Hall, our business community, and across city departments. Consequently, Los Angelinos every day are benefiting from the new and emerging relationships forged by your example. Thank you. Tonight, just down the street at LA Live, more than 1,200 individuals from a broad cross-section of the nonprofit community will gather at Club Nokia for a celebratory event called Peer to Peer, sponsored by Wallace Annenberg and the Annenberg Foundation. It's our way of saying thank you for the valuable contributions of those who put the priorities of others ahead of themselves. So, Mr. Mayor, President Garcetti, members of the Council, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for recognizing the value of the nonprofit sector by declaring today LA's first Nonprofit Day. At this time, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Fred Ali, the president of the Weingart Foundation.
And as your good friend Fred Ali is coming up, let me just say, anybody who's worked in this town with Fred and his various permutations, by the way, not just where he works currently, knows what a tremendous advocate for a safety net. And for the good work of what you do, Fred, is something that we admire greatly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to begin by thanking Council President Garcetti for introducing the motion leading to our first Nonprofit Day here in Los Angeles, October 25th. It's an honor to be here and take part in this celebration. As my colleague Len Aubie pointed out, there are many things to celebrate in our vibrant and wonderful nonprofit sector. This is a sector that has faced many challenges over the last few years, but has responded with creativity and enthusiasm and resiliency that allows many things that need to get done in Los Angeles to get done on a day in and day out basis. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the mayor for his leadership in creating the Office of Strategic Partnerships. It's an office that has done tremendous things in building bridges between philanthropy, the nonprofit sector, and organizations of city government. So, City Council, thank you for honoring the nonprofits. The great city of Los Angeles needs a nonprofit day, and I hope we can return on an annual basis to celebrate this great event. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Great words. And finally, I thought Fred was going to introduce, but I will. Regina Birdsell with the Center of Nonprofit Management to make a few final remarks. Thank you. You're welcome, Regina.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to celebrate with you people that are about solving problems and people that have put their lives on the line to make a difference in our neighborhoods. As everyone before me told you, we have a perfect storm between the long-term unemployment and the uncertainty in the stock market. We see about 30% of our nonprofits here in LA looking at maybe a 90-day reserve. Next year is going to be tough, and we are really excited to be working with Eileen and with Jim Clark to find ways to work better with philanthropy, with your offices, and with the federal government to find dollars that we can bring into this market, and we'd appreciate your support next year to make that possible. Thank you so much, and thank you for the mayor for all his work on this day.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Garcetti, we have Mr. Reyes, Mr. Kekorian, Mr. Alarcon for comments. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to thank my colleagues, Council President Eric Garcetti and our mayor, for allowing us to absorb and appreciate the hard work that the nonprofit sector accomplishes in this great city. And you're right. When you look at the three sectors, government, private, and nonprofit, the nonprofit is just as robust as the other two. I think the hindrance is very few people understand what it means to be in the nonprofit sector. Just out of graduate school, I was able to work with the Spanish-speaking Unity Council for about 4 years. And it is a Ford Foundation baby that was established back in the 60s. But what I learned just out of graduate school and working with this nonprofit is the notion of preventive measures, the ability to help people become productive, addressing the gaps that government has when we're talking about continuum of care for our seniors and the whole transition of our youth who are falling through the cracks. That saves us millions and millions of dollars when it comes to government resources. And that's a factor that we need to celebrate, we need to amplify, so that when we are making our investments, we understand the value of nonprofits. So as a former resource development director, I know what it is to make those cold calls, asking for support. I know what it means to look at your budget and talk about leveraging every dollar that you bring in will produce $10 of benefits and to prove it. And that is a very challenging effort. So I thank you for everything you do. Representing the district where 40% of my communities are at or below poverty, meaning a family of four is surviving with $20,000 a year, and all the stresses that come with it. If it were not for the nonprofit sector, many of our families would be living a much harder life, and we'd be losing much more ground in dealing with prevention measures. So I thank you for your hard work. I'm glad we finally have a day for you. We should have this continuously and find ways to amplify and celebrate what you do with some case stories, and let the corporate sector become much more aware of your benefit for everyone. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, colleagues, and I applaud you for all your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Krikorian, followed by Mr. Alarcon.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank the mayor for his long commitment to strategic partnerships and trying to better utilize our nonprofit sector and the spirit of volunteerism in this city to help us continue to move on, especially through these difficult times, because it's consistent with everything that we value about being American. Throughout our history, whether it's been the barn raising that it brings together a community to help a family, the volunteer fire department and the bucket brigade, the house of worship helping someone who's in need. Throughout our history, we've been a country where neighbors help neighbors and don't always rely on government to solve every problem, but step up when we have a neighbor who needs help, and we help that neighbor. And that's so beautifully represented by all of the people who are here today, filling this chamber with so many different priorities and passions about how they can, through their volunteer efforts, help others. And it's really inspiring to see this incredible turnout of enthusiastic people from the nonprofit sector. But we also know that in these difficult times, the demand for services from our nonprofit sector is spiking through the roof at the very same time that our philanthropic funders are struggling because of declines in the stock market, and at the same time that contributions from ordinary Americans are declining because of their own difficulties in getting through these times. And at that very same time, government is very often reducing its support of our nonprofit sector as well. So this is a perfect storm in many ways for the nonprofit sector. It's wonderful that we're here to recognize your work. It's important that as we go forward, we continue our very strong commitment to making sure that the nonprofit sector is vibrant and has a strong partnership with the city. And as the chair of the Arts, Parks, and Neighborhoods Committee, which has jurisdiction over volunteerism and the nonprofit community, I want to make my commitment to you that I am going to be very receptive to all of your suggestions for how this city can work in closer partnership with all of you to make a more vibrant, stronger community for all Angelenos. Thank you very much for being here.
Mr. Alarcon.
Yeah, I just want to rise and support and ditto
all the comments of my colleagues, but I also want to add a personal note that nonprofit corporations have been an essential part of my life since I was a teenager, having worked with them at Cal State Northridge, but more importantly, having worked within them after graduating college, working for Chicana Service Action Center, East Valley Community Center, Project Heavy, now known as New Directions for Youth, the Community Youth Gang Services Project, on all the facets of nonprofits. Served on 50 different committees for United Way, and created several nonprofit organizations, including a domestic violence shelter, my Young Senator Leadership Program, and a Gift of Christmas program where we've given out 30,000 toys over the last 18 years. So it's been a tremendous opportunity for me to use the notion of nonprofit corporation to fill those gaps in service that we simply can't do as a government. And yet we have such tremendous need in our community that no one else can do it. So I want to thank those of you who have committed your lives to nonprofit corporations to do work in your community, to do the right thing in the community, to help provide jobs in our community, to help counsel young people especially into a better path, to avoid gang violence, to work with communities, to protect their communities in so many different facets. The city of Los Angeles could not be, would be in worse shape, depending on your opinion about Los Angeles, when you look at our unemployment rate and the job picture and the foreclosure rate and the business closures. We would be in horrible shape if it were not for the support that we get from the various organizations that make up the nonprofit sector. One of the things that upsets me more than anything else is when we get criticism from the public about supporting nonprofit organizations with funding. We are absolutely in partnership with these nonprofits and could not do what we do without their support. So I want to thank the Mayor and Council President Garcetti for again recognizing this critical sector to our economy, to our well-being, to the quality of life in Los Angeles, the nonprofit sector.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Parks.
President, I also want to stand and just say thank you to the nonprofits and thank you, Mr. Garcetti and the Mayor, for bringing them here and honoring them. Just by coincidence, I was at a event just this weekend with Community Build. We had 150 volunteers that basically were redoing their youth facility, and I want to make sure that Brenda Shockley's here today, let her know how much we're appreciative of what Community Build does. And the Conservancy, we could not keep the graffiti down in our neighborhoods if they weren't part of that ongoing effort. And so we're just pleased that you've picked out some to ensure that we honor, but in general, honor nonprofits throughout the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, we're in the worst of times in this country since the Great Depression, and we're worried about where we go next. And a group that has filled that gap has been the nonprofits. It's been the folks standing with the mayor and the president of the council that have made a huge difference in a time when making a huge difference is the most important. We can forget the rhetoric. We can forget about just having, conversations of nothingness. But when you step to the plate and you get yourself out there and you make things happen, that's changing the world for the better. And not-for-profits are doing that, and to have a day for that, to just recognize that and continue to support it is what we should be doing as government. So hats off to all non-for-profits. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Garcetti.
So thank you, Mr. President. The Mayor and I would now like to present on behalf of all of us here these two proclamations, the Mayor and the City Council declaring Nonprofit Day here in the City of Los Angeles, October 25th, 2011. I'd like all the nonprofit folks to stand up in chambers so we can thank them with a great round of applause. Thank you. God bless what you do. And happy Nonprofit Day in LA.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Garcetti, and colleagues. It's time to vote on item number 21. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you. It's now declared official. There's a request from Ms. Perry for an introduction, then we'll go to item number 5. Ms. Perry?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would like the representatives of the Nagoya City Assembly to please rise so that I could recognize them. And please welcome them, give them a hand. They are Mr. Fujita Kazuhide, Mr. Horiba Akira, Mr. Okamoto Yoshihiro, Mr. Fujisawa Taramasa, Mr. Bano Koju, Mr. Nishikawa Hisashi, Mr. Iwamoto Takahiro, Mr. Narita Takayuki, Mr. Hattori Masaya, Mr. Hibi Kentaro, and they are being staffed today by Mr. Okuchi Toyoshi and Mr. Fujisawa Yasuhiko is their guide today, and I believe they have an interpreter, and that Mr. Kazuhide would like to say a few words.
Good morning, sir. 日本語で失礼をします。私たち名古屋市議会から今日このロサンゼルス市議会へと訪問させていただきました10名の調査団、視察団でございます。
Thank you very much for inviting us. We are from City of Nagoya Assembly, and we are 10 delegates, Assembly members. Thank you for having us today.
まずはロサンゼルス市並びにロサンゼルス市議会の皆さんに、私からお礼を申し上げたいというふうに思います。本年の3月11日に、我が国には東日本大震災という大変大きな地震が発生をいたしました。
First of all, it's very nice to meet with all of you, City of Los Angeles, members of City of Los Angeles, and council members. We're very glad to be here, and I would like to take this opportunity to express our deep appreciation for your thoughts when March 11 earthquake disaster happened.
そしてまた本年9月には私たちの名古屋にも台風15号ナンバー50、台風15号が、発生をし、大変甚大な被害を出しました。ロサンゼルス市並びに市議会の皆様方から大変なご心配のメッセージをいただいております。この場をお借りをして、心から御礼を申し上げたいというふうに思います。
On behalf of the City of Nagoya, I also would like to thank all of you that you have showed us a very deep support. Again, back in September, there was a typhoon number 15's disaster happened in the City of Nagoya. Thank you all very much.
名古屋とロサンゼルス市は、1959年から姉妹提携を結んでいただきました。私は1964年生まれでありますから、私が生まれる前からこのロサンゼルスと名古屋は姉妹提携を結んでいただいて、友情を育んでいただいてまいりました。
And City of Los Angeles and City of Nagoya have been sister cities ever since 1959. I was born in 1964, so it is longer than my life that these two cities have been having a very deep relationship and friendship.
この長いロス市との歴史から私たちは多くのことを学び、そしてこれからも皆さんと一緒に深い友情を育んでまいりたいというふうに思っております。
And in this long history of friendship and being sister cities, we have shared a lot of ideas together. We have nurtured and friendship, and I hope in the future we will continue to do so.
ロサンゼルス市議会の皆様におかれましては、名古屋にお越しの節には私どもがまた名古屋市内をしっかりとご案内をさせていただきたいというふうに思います。名古屋には名古屋城、そして今江戸時代400年前の創建当時を復元するために名古屋城本丸御殿の復元作業、これは総木造の本丸パレスの復元に当たっております。
And right now, one of the things we offer in the city of Nagoya is Nagoya Castle, as some of you may be aware, and it's being restored from 400 years ago, and especially the main residence tower is being restored. And if and when you will come visit Nagoya, we will become your personal tours to show you around.
どうぞまた皆さん名古屋にぜひお越しください。お待ちをいたしております。今日はこうした機会をお与えいただき本当にありがとうございました。
And last but not least, again, thank you very much for inviting us today. And we hope to see you in the city of Nagoya, and we will be looking forward to seeing you, to welcome you. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you. どうもありがとうございました。Mr. Weezer and Mr. Zine would like to say a couple of words.
I want to welcome our guest and thank you very much for continuing the relationship we have with the city of Los Angeles. I was in Nagoya a few years back, and I want to thank you for the welcome mat you put out for myself and other City of Los Angeles officials. That sister city relationship is very strong. It's been strong. We got to continue to remain a strong relationship. Again, I want to thank you for your welcome in Japan and here in Los Angeles. I hope we have offered the same, and we look forward to our continued relationship. Given the large number of Japanese that live in Los Angeles and the history that Japanese have played in contributing to this great city, we hope to continue this relationship to improve lives for everyone, no matter what country we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zine.
Yes, I too want to acknowledge the folks from Nagoya. I visited Nagoya, a beautiful place. People are warm and friendly and very inviting. So to your members that are here, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure visiting, and it was a beautiful experience. And Ms. Perry, thank you for bringing the introduction today. So bless you. Have a safe journey and a great time in the City of the Angels, Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Perry, and welcome to all our friends from Nagoya. Okay, so before we go to, thank you, arigato. We'll go next to item 5, which was called special, and we will come back for general public comment, but because of some timing issues on attendance, we're going to go to that first. Mr. Parks called it special. Recognize him first.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, on this item, and having monitored this for a number of years, I certainly agree that it's time to raise the fees for rent stabilization and SCEP so that those programs can continue. I also think it's important that we realize that upon the implementation of SCEP, it was always viewed as the fee should be paid by the tenant and that the work repair should be done by the owner or apartment manager. Those guidelines have been steadfast throughout the history of SCEP. One of the things I'm most concerned about is that we've spent over $1 million on an RSO study. My understanding from talking to Mr. Cardenas that study should be in his committee by December of this year so that we can get the issues that are being addressed, and that we should be looking forward to not cherry picking that report, but moving forward as an inclusive review of rent stabilization at that time. And so I would make a motion that we move the current report that's before us, excluding recommendation 4 as stated in this report, and I would hope that we could move forward and have this approval. We have a second on that.
Thank you. That was seconded by Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker.
Yes, I was talking to some of my colleagues and some of the people who are interested in making sure that the report is actually heard in committee. The RSO report is referred to, and now that I'm the chairman of the Housing Committee, I commit to making sure that we have that in the committee heard before the end of January at the latest, preferably sooner, but at the latest before the end of January. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alacon.
Council members, I rise to ask that we not delete recommendation number 4 from the report. It seeks to strike a balance between the owners and the tenants, recognizing that this is a very tough time, hitting most hard on the tenants. Not to say it's not affecting the apartment owners as well, but clearly the tenants, particularly those of modest incomes, are having the toughest time right now. What it seeks to do is to provide what recommendation number 4 seeks to do is provide balance. It would be a 50-50 split of that charge, and would be a little more fair. Now, currently, 100% of that burden falls on the tenants. I think it's a reasonable change to request, and I would move that, in fact, we accept the report as presented out of the committee without the amendment or without the change recommended by Mr. Parks. Second? Mr. Reyes.
Second for Mr. Reyes. Mr. Koretz.
Well, I'm sort of in the middle here, so maybe I'll just think out loud a little bit. I know tenants are struggling. I know landlords, especially small landlords, are struggling. Where exactly we should place the burden is the question. And I'm not 100% wedded to the SCEP fee being entirely paid for by tenants. I would at least be open to a compromise of splitting the increase between tenants and landlords. But what I would actually prefer doing is looking at this less in a vacuum of one issue and actually dealing with the report that we've been waiting to deal with, and deal with some of the landlord issues and tenant issues and some gives on both sides. So while I'd be open to that compromise, I also would be open to, and I appreciate Mr. Cardenas' commitment to hear this report by January in his committee, and we can look at some of these issues on both sides and see if we can resolve some of these housing issues and some things that will be beneficial to each side. So I'm open to the compromise. I'm also open to waiting a couple months, trying to hear this in December, but at least by January, as was committed, and see if we can do things that are beneficial for everybody.
Mr. Reyes.
Can I have the housing department at the table? I just have a couple of questions. If and just about the history, because in committee it was a very emotional plea as far as what tenants were feeling given their economic state and what their challenges are. We also heard a very heart-wrenching plea from the landlords who are also suffering from their plight given the issues of our economy. But when we went with 100% fees on the tenants and 0 to the landlords, back then, is there anyone that can you speak to the history of that and how we got to that formula?
I can speak to some of the history of that. First of all, just a comment, we fully understand and appreciate the comments of council that these are very difficult economic times to come forward with a fee increase of any type, whether it be $1 or $10, whatever. It's difficult on the tenants, it's difficult on the landlords. We understand the sensitivities to that. As it regards the split of the fee increase with regards to code enforcement, we deemed it was just appropriate to go forward with what the status quo has historically been. So from the beginning of this program, the SCEP fee has been passed through to the tenants. I believe that the rationale behind that, which again goes back many years, far before I was involved in this program, was the fact that the tenants are benefiting significantly from the improvements that are being made to the housing stock as a result of the code enforcement program. I believe we've seen historically as well within the program dramatic improvements in the multifamily housing stock here in the city. So I believe that was the initial rationale behind it, and we've decided, at least for these purposes, to go forward with the way that it has historically been treated.
But we don't have any tangible, real data that speaks to those assertions. We made certain assumptions about why we structured this formula this way. Time has passed. Do we have enough body of information to start looking at ways in which we can weigh these decisions?
Well, I think it primarily comes down to a policy decision on behalf of the council and on the mayor's office on weighing both sides and figuring out what is the most appropriate. The only data I would suggest that we have is that we can show, as we're now entering, I believe, our third overall cycle of code enforcement, we've seen a reduction in the amount of times we have to go back for code compliance purposes. We clearly have seen improvement in the housing stock that has taken place. But as regards who is paying for that fee, I would suggest it's primarily a policy decision that would be made by the elected officials.
So I guess what I'm hearing is we don't have a real nexus by which to start attaching percentages of cost for the SCEP fee as you see it at this time, because it is essentially a policy decision based on whatever rationale arises given your presentation. Would that be accurate?
Well, I believe arguments can be made for both sides here. So it really, again, we've just put forth historically how it has been done, and we didn't suggest, in light of kind of the narrow issue here, which is increasing the overall fee structure to continue the programs in their current state, we didn't attempt to address anything beyond that.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, this is just doing my homework at this stage right now. How many units fall under this program?
Well, under the RSO program, I believe there are approximately 630,000 units that fall under the rent stabilization ordinance, and there's 720,000 units that fall under the systematic code enforcement program.
And again, why the increase is necessary at this point, I'd like to know.
Well, the last increase that we had to implement this program was in 2006. So there have been no increase in fees since that period of time. And so at this point in time, it's necessary to keep up with the cost of living changes for employees, for the delivery of services. We're not really changing the overall implementation of the program at all. It's keeping up with what those costs are.
Yeah, but when we hear some of the stories about corruption, I get it all the time. Corruption, kickbacks, sloppy work. I also get comments about not collecting this and not collecting that, or coming in a negative way into an apartment complex. Give me some understanding of those issues, especially the monies and the auditing and the corruption and all of that. Why do we need the increase? Why can't we just be more efficient, more effective? Have we done an audit lately? That kind of stuff.
Well, first of all, we've taken numerous steps to become more effective and more efficient just in the way that we handle the accounting on this and the training that we've done. We've done ethics training on this. We're going to a large extent to internet transactions, which reduces the overall cost and increases the efficiencies. We've taken a multitude of steps to make it the most efficiently run program we possibly can. We've also paid a lot of attention to the To the outreach efforts, we've tried to be very fair and objective in not only outreach to the tenants, but also outreach to the landlords. We've increased those efforts over the past year to provide training courses particularly for the smaller building owners. We hold regular meetings with the Landlord Association as well as with the tenant organization. So we've tried to administer this program in a fair and efficient fashion. This is a difficult program to run. There's a natural tension, I think, between tenants and building owners. I oftentimes find myself...
Why is there a natural tension? I don't necessarily
A natural
buy that.
tension.
Yeah, why do you say that? Because I know in my district, I have a lot of mon-pas, we call them. 2 units, 4 units, 6 units, 8 units. And the people I know, like Hilda in Westchester, I mean, they're there every day. They're working with their people. In fact, they didn't give an increase to one particular tenant because of the economy situation. I mean, I hear human stories of positive relationships between the landlords and these tenants. So I'm just, what are you talking about when you say that? Is that the big ones that have 100 units, or? I just want to understand where you're getting that from.
Well, again, most relationships, I would suggest, are very positive, and our relationships with tenants and landlords are very positive on the whole. But we have to remember the fact that we're dealing with 720,000 multifamily residential units here, and we're dealing with more than 2 million tenants that are affected by this. So I think very naturally you're going to have disagreements that surface, and we end up being the recipient and the arbitrator of those disagreements. It's part and parcel of the program and of the job that we have.
Why historically were the tenants paying that fee?
Roberta, do you have more of a history?
How was that logic by the
discussed?
policymakers in that day instituted that said, tenant, you will pay that fee? I'd like to know the history of that, and then how we get to a moment in time right now where we might want to change it or whatever. I'd like to appreciate the historic backdrop from the policymakers' point of view.
Actually, in the beginning...
Your name, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the director of the Code Enforcement Program, Domingo Salceda. And initially, the entire fee was decided to be passed on to the tenants, and it was based mainly on a policy issue.
But why? What was the logic the policymakers used at that point?
Well, I think at that time, if you recall, it was just $1 per unit per month. And I think the tenants actually came to the council chambers and they were actually chanting, we want the $1 fee. And they played a major role at that time in accepting the $1 fee for the inspections.
If I could ask you,
I know my time has run out, and I look forward to the public comment and then maybe come back again. Thanks.
Mr. Huizar is our next speaker.
Thank you. I also had some of the same questions as Mr. Rosenthal. And the rental unit registration fee, that is paid by the landlord or the tenant?
The RSO fee is paid for by the...
It's paid by the landlord. Half of it's passed through to the tenant.
Half of it's passed.
Half of it. So that already, there's a half and half.
Yes.
That's correct.
And what's the rationale behind that?
Well, again, I'd have to go back, because this program goes back to its inception on the RSO fee is back in the late 1960s.
Right. I think Anna might have a better...
Anna, would you like to respond to that? Not that I'm trying to date you back to the 1960s when you were involved with the program, but Anna Ortega, who runs the program, has been involved with this for some period of time.
Okay, because as I understand it right now, the SCEP fee is paid by the landlord, but it's a pass-through to the tenant, so the tenants actually pay it. But is it a pass-through at the discretion of the landlord, or is it a pass-through that the tenant automatically gets on their rent? And then that's one question. The other question is the rental unit registration fee, which is also being increased. That's a 50-50 split, and what's the rationale in that?
The rent stabilization program, the whole ordinance was adopted in 1979, following the passage of Proposition 13 and the times and the feelings of the times that property owners weren't passing through the savings to the tenants. And rent stabilization ordinances were being adopted statewide. In Los Angeles, the policymakers at the time decided to split the cost of the program 50-50 between landlords and tenants. I guess that seemed fair to them, that this was a program that benefited tenants, but that affected the rental units of the property owners. So since the beginning, it's been 50-50 on the registration fee. So both of the fees are paid for by the owner, by the property owner, in the month of January or February, and it's their option to pass through whatever they want to pass through. They legally have the right to pass through a monthly portion of the SCEP fee. So right now it's $2.96 per month, and 50% of the registration fee, which they pass through the 50% in one lump sum.
Okay. So it's at the discretion of the landlord. And what happens in practice? Do we have any data that shows whether landlords pass this through 100%, maybe 80%? Do we know?
We don't know for sure. In the study, we found that generally large, well-managed or professionally managed properties tend to pass through all of the fees that they're legally eligible to pass through. Mm-hmm. And there was also some evidence that smaller mom-and-pop landlords who may have more personal relationships with their tenants may not always pass through the fees that they could pass through. Mm-hmm. But it's a business decision on the part of the landlord.
Okay. Now, if this, we always say it's a policy decision. Let's say this was an administrative decision, and it doesn't come legislatively, and the department is supposed to make policy for what you're responsible for. We have one fee, which is 50-50, correct? And the rationale is that both the tenant and the landlord benefit. You have the SCEP fee right now, which is passed through, let's say it's tenant, and there's a proposal to be 50-50, and you have to rationalize that. What type of world would you create under those, under those circumstances? You're there each and every day. As legislative people here, our staffs, and we work on this, but it's not the thing we spend each and every day on. What would, what makes sense?
Thank you for the question, Councilman. Well, it's a very difficult question because I think we hear legitimate arguments on both sides. We've had a long-term relationship with the tenants here. They make a very good argument for splitting this fee, particularly in the challenging economic times that we have. The landlords, I think, also make an argument, particularly the smaller and the mom-and-pop landlords. So it's a very difficult call. I think if we were to pick a particular side in this, we're going to get criticized by the other side. So that actually, that discussion, though, was intended to be part and parcel of, I think, the larger discussion around the rent stabilization ordinance and a variety of technical amendments that were proposed there as part of a larger package. Which
my final question, my time is up.
Thank you, and then we have to go to Mr. Alarcon after that.
Okay, my final question, my time is up. Do you see any inconsistency by having one fee being 50-50 and the other one being paid totally by the tenants?
Well, they're inconsistent on the pass-throughs, yes. They're consistent on the way it's traditionally been done.
Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, in a perfect world, I would recommend that what we're talking about here is our code enforcement program. And the question is, who should pay for that? Should we have our building owners operate their apartments in accord with the code? I think that's a slam dunk, yes. So then, who does it benefit? It would benefit the tenants. We don't have any argument there. At the same time, who should pay for that assurance that the apartment is going to be operated legally, and who's going to get the benefit? In a perfect world, you would charge the owner if they are found to be in violation. And if they were not found in violation, you might want to charge the tenant. Now, I don't know, honestly, and there's been no analysis of this, but I don't know how many times they go out on it's a complaint-driven system, so because it is complaint-driven, I would, well, first of all, it is enforced 100% on all the properties, but then it is also complaint-driven. On the complaint-driven side, you're probably going to find a lot more violations because they're honing in on a specific thing. On the general code enforcement, they probably find a limited number of violations compared to the complaint-driven side. All that is to say, it seems to be more fair to just divide it in half, pay 50-50. I don't know why. Well, I take your word for it that because it was so low at the time, $1, and the economy was probably a little better. Any economy is better than this economy. So there was no complaint to pay the dollar to get the benefit of code enforcement. But that was a long time ago. And what is the charge now? Like $24 or something?
$35.52.
$35.52
a year. Yeah.
Well, it's okay. It's a year, but that's still How many bottles of milk can you buy for $35? You know, so I think we have to balance this a little better than we did historically. It might have worked when it was $1, but at $35, it has some impact, given that the tenants are facing the worst economy, high unemployment rates, hard finding good quality jobs with good pay, and I just think it's more fair to split it down the half, not get into the detailed analysis of. Well, I don't see why the tenant should pay anything when there's a code violation, and just because they report it, they shouldn't have to pay anything. But rather than get into that kind of detail, I just say they're willing to accept 50-50. Let's do 50-50.
Mr. Reyes.
As was stated, and I was looking at some of my notes, it seems like the Blue Ribbon Committee proposed back in the day this dollar fee increase, and over time it's increased to what it is today. Do we have time to allow this body to understand some semblance of rationale given the results of a study that can give us a perspective as to how we perhaps can share that cost? I'm not saying 50-50, it could be another percentage, maybe 18% to the landlords and the remainder to the tenants. I mean, some kind of a mix that is more reflective of current conditions. Could it be said that the landlords have also benefited from these inspections?
Well, first of all, it's critically important that we get this fee issue addressed now. We go out with annual billing here very shortly, and we have some end deadlines coming up very soon. So it's critical for us to continue these services going into next year.
What's your drop dead date? Can you move the microphone closer to you? We can hear you better.
Yes. The drop dead date we've been working with is the first week in November, because we have to go out and do the calculations for 133,000 different bills. We've got to run tests on those calculations, have the billings out in December. So we have a very limited window of time to complete all of that work for the annual billing cycle. So from the standpoint of the overall budget and the dollar amounts, it's really critical that we move forward on that now. As to longer term, some systematic analysis of impacts, we haven't worked through exactly what we would, how we would break that down to do that. It's something we could look into, but that would have to be done going forward as opposed to something we could do over the next few days.
Is that what Councilman Cardenas is making? Is that the statement you're making, Councilmember Cardenas? That we would have back in committee some type of analysis that gives us something to stand on when we talk about this percentage allocation and fees, given that right now it's 100% on the tenant?
They're doing the comprehensive report that's been sitting in committee and I already committed to hear us at the latest by the end of January, which covers many issues.
So the end result would be that if number 4 is on the report today is withdrawn, the tenants end up paying 100% fees as of now until the results of your analysis?
Well, what's before us is to whether or not we're going to change the policy going forward. Right now, if we did nothing, then the split would be 50-50 on one fee, 100% on the other.
Right. And that is what Councilman Alarcon and myself wanted to address in our 2 votes in committee to see if we can get away from 100%.
That's what I heard him say, sure.
By removing number 4, it does end up being 100%. Correct?
By Alarcon's motion, it would follow through with him splitting it 50-50 across the board.
I guess my question is this. If we look at the statistics, the figures, and the studies sometime in January, we can revisit this issue and perhaps be in a position, given the numbers what they are, of reassessing the 100% fee charge on the tenants.
Yes, I think we need to I think we'd need to bifurcate the issue so that the fee increase goes forward, but an opportunity to do some analysis of this that we could fold in to a discussion around the larger issues in the RSO, I believe, as Councilman Cardenas was suggesting.
The answer to your question, Councilmember Reyes, regardless of what we do or don't do today, we could always revisit the issue about how the split goes at any time. It's a policy decision of this council. Goes through committee, bring it up for a vote, and then we could decide at that time.
And do we have the capacity to get those numbers, correct, for this analysis?
Yes, I think at the direction of the council, we would do that analysis and bring that forward at the time that the RSO is brought back up for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd just like to kind of comment on a couple of items that came forward. First of all, we had the term a perfect world. If we had a perfect world, we would not have a shortage of affordable housing. But what we've added on in this perfect world is we have rent control, we have real location costs, about $17,000. We only allow the landlord to get 50% of their major rehab. And we also have a condo conversion fine in the city of Los Angeles. If we make the recommendation to split the fee, it's going contrary to the rent stabilization study and the recommendations of the housing department, because they did not make a recommendation in that regard. And so I think what would be fair in realizing that over the last 20 years, this fee has gone up from $1 to $3 a month. And the key from the inception was that tenants pay the fee, landlords make the repairs. And that's the consistency we should have until we get through the rent stabilization study, which Mr. Cardenas said will be before his committee and on the council. And so I again make a recommendation and motion that we remove number 4, move forward with the recommendations of the housing department, be consistent with what's in the rent stabilization study, and realize the larger issues that we're dealing with in housing, that we put some impositions on landlords greater than any other city in our region. And so I move forward with that recommendation.
Thank you. That is our last speaker. So with that, we have time for the vote. Madam Clerk, we have had no motion since the Alarcon-Reyes motion. Is that correct? That was the final motion made?
Yes.
Okay. So colleagues, we will go into in reverse order. The Alarcon-Reyes motion it would be first, which was moved to complete the HCD report, including recommendation 4, either as a single vote or that could be bifurcated. Secondly, if that fails, it will go to the Parks-Cardenas motion, which is to move the HCD report excluding recommendation number 4. Okay? Is there anybody wishing to bifurcate or call anything else? If not, we have that before us. Sorry? Okay. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote. There are 5 ayes.
5 ayes, 8 noes.
Okay, that fails. Now we'll take the Parks-Cardenas motion, which is to move the HCD report excluding recommendation 4. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 2 noes.
That is approved. Thank you. We can go to the next item called special, please. We'll send that forthwith without objection.
Senator's leaving.
Next item, council members, would be general public comment or items called special.
Yeah, we'll go to general public comment. Thank you. And our first speaker is L. Ayers. After that will be Richard Otterstrom.
Good morning. My name is Leslie Ayers. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here to respond to item 5. Can I get some quiet, please?
The folks who are moving out, if we can please keep our conversations to a minimum for public comment. And just as a procedural note, we can't actually take public comment on something that was on the agenda. So
It's public comment?
Yeah, it's general public comment. So if there's
Okay.
anything general, but it can't be on item 5.
It's a miss.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I can't speak on. Are you saying I can't speak on number 5?
Not on the specifics of it, under the Brown Act,
okay.
unfortunately,
All
but
right.
anything else of a general nature you may, or specific items that are not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm just very happy to be here today. I came down today to speak on item number 5, of course. It's a big concern for me, and I would like to, when number 5 comes up, explain to you a little bit about the history, a little bit about how rents went up since 2000 all the way through the housing bubble and crisis, because it's very important to me as an accountant, if I'm going to sit at a table and say, well, the owners are coming to me making complaints that they need more money, I want to see an income statement. I want to see financials. The reason is because I know that they've been making a lot of money. Since 2000, the rents have doubled 2 times plus in many cases. And as a market rate payer, I take issue with having to pay operating costs. I take issue with having to pay high rent and operating costs for the owner. I'll get back to that. I'll give you the history when I come back on number 5. And also I would like to make a friendly amendment for people who are on SSI and Social Security. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Otterstrom is our next speaker. After that is Bobby Cooper.
Good morning. It's still morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the president-elect for the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, better known as AGLA.
Sorry, I've already stated, Mr. Alarcon, we can't talk specifically
has
about
nothing
item 5,
to do
but
with that.
He's making general comments, which is in order. Go
Please, this is a general comment. If I could continue. Thank
please,
you.
Mr. Otterstrom.
AGLA represents owners of property owners that provide rental property for the general public, and in doing that, we do management and maintenance of that property. Part of that maintenance is gardening. We've noticed that there's a long-term demonstration on the grass at City Hall out on the ground cover, and we figured there's going to be some damage there. And we'd like to do our part by volunteering some labor, because that's what we do on our own properties. We'd like to volunteer some labor to provide the resurrection of the ground cover when the time comes. So it's just an offer we're making. If the council would like to contact us through Jim Clark, we could arrange that, and maybe we could help the city out. And it sounds like a fun thing, and maybe other industries would get involved with it too.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Richard, and we'll be in contact with Jim about that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Bobby Cooper is our next speaker. Sorry, ma'am, we can't go back. Bobby Cooper is our next speaker. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's out of order. Mr. Cooper? Excuse me, ma'am. I cannot have you back at the microphone. My apologies. Bobby Cooper is our next speaker.
Yes. This is your Los Angeles Police Department surveilling me. This is 6 years now. Just listen. What is this for? I'm not a criminal. I'm an African American small businessman, been ripped off, victimized by a number of Los Angeles police officers. I'm calling for a task force, just like you called for the task force when they first alleged they were trying to help me. I'm talking to you, Mr. Reyes, because that's really in your district, sir. You know what I'm saying? You've met me before. with regards to this matter.
Mr. President, the Speaker should direct his comments to the
Please, if you
Council
could
as a
address
whole.
the entire Council as a whole, sir. Thank
I
you.
am calling for an investigation into theft of my insurance, theft of 4 bank accounts, and over $10,000 when I first came here. Now, this is going into 3 years that I'm coming up here, asking you, begging you to address this matter. And insofar as housing, that's another farce. You people run the housing. Los Angeles Police Department runs who lives where and who can stay. You know, I'm calling for an investigation, like I said, into the theft of thousands of dollars in insurance proceeds that belong to me by individual Los Angeles police officers and a business takeover by attorneys for the county of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Armin Makazjian is our next speaker. After that will be Dr. Williams. Good morning. How are
Thank
you?
you very much. My name is Armin McCashin. I'm basically a property owner and a business owner in East Hollywood. I just wanted to make a general comment regarding the motion that was passed last week regarding an overheight fence district in East Hollywood. Basically, the whole issue started with a couple of property owners on Normandy Avenue, just north of the 101 freeway. And that neighborhood is highly transient in nature. There's a freeway overpass, underpass, and on-ramp. And so forth. These people had every right to protect their properties from safety. So as a result, systematic code enforcement came along and imposed fines for overheight fences. Therefore, as a result, residents on Wilton Place also joined in to fight against these fees. I just want to bring to your attention that Wilton is also a highly heavily traveled street which has similar adversities, something called external obsolescence, which adversely affects public property values. However, the surrounding neighborhoods are not affected by these type of adversities. Therefore, I strongly urge your council members to reconsider this motion and implement a fence district in East Hollywood on a discretionary basis and include neighborhoods which are highly transient by nature and are a threat to public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you want to hang out, my Deputy Chief of Staff can talk to you. We're having meetings with folks to define those boundaries. I know there was a general one defined, but we're going to make sure that streets that want it can have it, those that don't will be cut out. So just hang out for a second. He'll come talk to you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Dr. Williams is our next speaker. After that is Michael Hudson Medina. Good morning again.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, DWP liaison, and have been reviewing the Citizens Committee for the selection of the Executive Director of the Office of Public Accountability. Wow. The problem, they don't follow the Brown Act. They hold public meetings and give the public 1 2-minute period to talk at the beginning of all of the items. But then they change it the next time. But then they changed it the time before. So we don't know what they're doing. Why? I think they may need some training from the city attorney for their Brown Act compliance, because even the minutes of the meetings, which they did not allow any public comment on, were flawed because they did not include the comment cards from the previous meetings, which would have shown clearly that the headhunter that was approved is not in compliance with the Brown Act, i.e., they didn't allow the public to comment before they took the vote. So it's a mess. I would highly recommend that you have the city attorney review and audit their compliance with the Brown Act. Now, they have an advertisement for the executive director and now the combined position of executive director and ratepayers advocate. Not even the state CPUC allowed that. The executive director should be separate from the ratepayers advocate, because the ratepayers advocate is going to have enough problems. And by the way, they referenced that the ratepayers advocate or the executive director would have to look at the long-term strategic planning of the DWP. They had that for 2 years and have never produced a strategic plan for a $6 billion department.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Michael Hudson Medina is our next speaker. Good morning, and then Arnold Sachs will take us home.
Good morning, Honorable Council. And I'm here, first of all, to thank you so much for listening to me last time. I'm not serenading you with my violin today, but in order just to thank Councilmember Perry and Councilmember Labange for hearing me out, and also for Councilmember Perry for having a staff member follow up. So few times we hear that people do follow up on their word, and thank you so much. And the intersections of the arts today is amazing with the nonprofits. I'm also the founder of a very small nonprofit, Latino Arts LA, which we serve the inner city children here, primarily in Boyle Heights, with free music programs. And so I just wanted to say thank you very much, and also to report out that I was able to play for about an hour set in a niche that didn't block anyone, and it was very positive. I played my Puccini, and at the same time when people asked about what beautiful tune that was, I told them about our home opera company, Los Angeles Opera, having a free performance next Saturday, November 5th, and Placido himself will be singing. So these kids are going to be going to see Placido sing for free, and again, the more we have street musicians as part of our culture here in Los Angeles, in the metro or on the street corners, the better our city will be and the more educated our youth will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate it. Arnold Sachs, our final speaker in general public comment. I don't see Mr. Sachs. All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Next item called special, please.
Item 1, called special by Councilmember Koretz.
Thank you for your patience. We have one speaker on this. Liza Perel and John Workman. Like to come forward on item number 1. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you just move the microphone down a tiny bit? There you go. We can hear you better. There you go. Perfect.
Good morning. We were cited for 2 code violations, one being failure to provide and maintain covered off-street parking. We presented evidence of the existence of a garage structure, thus showing that we were in compliance with this alleged code violation. This is when we appeared before you 2 weeks ago. The second violation we were cited for was that the garage was demolished without the required permits. Please note that the garage was built in 1936. We purchased the property in the year 2000. As you will note from the documents we forwarded last time, we did not demolish our garage, but rather it imploded after years of water saturation and neglect, which resulted in dry rot, a fungus that spread throughout the building. If a structure falls down of its own accord, technically it was not demolished. The Collins English Dictionary defines demolition as to tear down or break up, which is an action verb requiring the intent to do that. The intent required behind the relevant code section with respect to our case is not there. We did not intentionally tear down our garage, but rather it fell down. In your documents, you'll see a note from the structural engineer, which was submitted as evidence. This letter was important for 2 reasons. It showed that prior to the implosion of the garage, we hired the engineer to inspect our garage and make suggestions for making it structurally sound. This confirms we had no intention of demolishing the garage. Secondly, the compromised status of the garage is confirmed by the engineer in his report, where he found that it had dry rot that had spread throughout the building. We were given building permits without being advised of the necessity of requiring a demolition permit. Logically, how could you be given a permit to build if you did not demolish a pre-existing structure unless the structure was not demolished but fell down, which is what we had told the Building and Safety Committee. So we're in compliance.
Thank you, sir. If you'd like to continue, it's 2 minutes per speaker.
I cede my 2 minutes.
We can't, unfortunately, and it's actually one of the formal rules is we can't cede our time, or else somebody might be there for 20 minutes, so my apologies.
We're in compliance. We're perfect to provide covered parking.
The fact that we're in compliance and providing maintaining covered off-street parking now, and since we did not intentionally demolish the garage, we are requesting that the
vote against the alleged code violations.
The vote against the alleged code violations.
All the evidence.
And all. That you vote against the alleged code violations. All the evidence is on file.
Do you want to say
Thank you. All right, we'll close the public comment. Is there anything else you want to say?
Just to reiterate, without the speech, just to reiterate, this was a kind of a fluke situation that happened, and I actually was the one that got the permit. I was never told to get a demolition permit downtown. I was told it was moot because they had understood the whole story from day one, and I wasn't even aware that this was going on until just recently. I have complied with the city. I built the garage. I did everything I was supposed to do, and again, I've followed the code, and again, I was told by Building and Safety when I went down there and they issued the building permit, nobody mentioned about a demolition permit because it didn't exist. So it just seems ridiculous and moot. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, this remains a relatively difficult one for me to sort out. I wonder if our staff could respond to what was said and discuss sort of the history of this, how we came to this point.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good morning, Council. My name is Charles Kalibala. I'm here to represent the Department of Building and Safety. In case of item 1, CF Council File number 11-4903. In this case, the department is proposing a lien of $2,308.62 to recover the cost of inspection plus appropriate fees and fines against property address 6517 West Whitworth, which is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Wetman. Now, the history of this case is such that on December 16, 2009, the department investigated and identified code violations at this property. Orders to comply were issued to the property owner, but the owner failed to comply within the prescribed period. The owner was warned that failure to comply will result into the assessment of a non-compliance fee, and the owner failed to comply still. Therefore, the owner was assessed one invoice which includes a compliance fee of $550, a late charge of $1,375, interest of $330.62, and title report fee of $53 for a grand lien amount of $2,308.62. The owner was cited for performing demolitions at his property, which is a single-family dwelling, without obtaining the necessary permits, and also failing to maintain off-street parking, which is a violation of Los Angeles Municipal Code section number 12.12a. In addition, collection efforts have been attempted, and all efforts to collect these invoices have failed. The property owner has been determined by the department to be a delinquent property owner who has failed to pay the charges assessed by the department, has failed to acknowledge the violations, and has failed to meet the departmental orders. Therefore, the department has no choice but to impose a fee of a lien proposal of $2,308.62.
Now, what about their argument that the initial problem wasn't of their own making, that basically the garage collapsed and they didn't have much to do with that having occurred, and eventually are in compliance, although a lot of back and forth with the department?
Well, the department looked at that. We sent the protest over to the inspector who performed the inspection, and the inspector dismissed the charges they are claiming. They are claiming not only that they are not responsible for the demolition because they claim that it's water that seeped onto their property that destroyed it, but a property doesn't just collapse by itself. There has to be a reason for the collapse. And water is not enough to actually destroy the property. In fact, it was determined by the inspector that they actually demolished the property, you see. And therefore, they needed permits to before that demolition or even the cleanup was done. So whatever they claim is actually not false. It has been dismissed by the inspectors, and the department finds that the charges as per order to comply are correct.
Well, the original amount of $550 for the violation is now over $2,300. I think the issue is a little bit fuzzy. So, as a recognition of that, is there any appropriate middle ground that we could suggest on the amount that we're charging?
Yeah, for middle ground, I would have to talk to my managers, but I talked to Mr. Dave Lara, who is one of our managers. He said that he would be okay with taking off the accumulated interest of $330.62 to bring the total down, the lien total to $1,978.
Okay, well, in that case, I will move to reduce it by the amount of $330.62, reduce the accumulated interest, and move that we move forward with the motion, but that we substitute the total amount at $1,978, which is the amount minus the interest.
All right, thank you, Mr. Koretz. Any other members wishing to be heard? If not,
Excuse me, Mr. President, is there a second to Mr. Kretz's motion?
yes, I'll second that. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and open the roll on that. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that is approved as amended by Mr. Koretz. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 9, call special for cards.
Okay, item number 9 is our next one, and there's no action required today, but Arnold Sachs has left, so we'll close the public hearing. No action is necessary. We'll go to the next one, which is item 18, also called special for card. Mr. Sachs is also gone, so let's go ahead and take a vote on 18. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote. Oh, sorry. Was there an amendment? Hold on. Let's don't tabulate the vote. Go ahead.
Did you already tabulate?
Not on 18. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. I just needed to do a verbal clarification that the Bureau of Street Services will receive an additional $185,000 for a grand total of $350,000 to implement improvements in and around the public right-of-way at 1800 South Figueroa. So it's just a technical correction on the motion that's before you. Okay.
Say the numbers just one more time. Sorry, it's
The
increased.
clarification that the Bureau of Street Services will receive an additional $185,000 for a grand total of $350,000 to implement improvements in and around the public right-of-way at 1800 South Figueroa.
Is that, and from the same fund?
Yes.
Oh. All right.
Okay.
That goes from 185 to 350.
Do you want me to find out who seconded it? No, I'm not.
Okay. If there's no objection, that's accepted as friendly. Let's go ahead and prepare the roll again and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you. That is approved. Next item, or next order of business.
Mr. President, there's a request to send items 12 and 14 forthwith.
Without objection, we'll send 12 and 14 forthwith.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There is an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Cardenas requests to leave at 10:45 on November 4th. A motion is required.
Okay. Go ahead and move that, Mr. Sorry, Ms. Perry, second. Without objection, that'll be excused. Next excuse.
That clears the desk.
Any announcements, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, often we do not honor our own, and I wanted to make sure that we're aware that an organization with a fairly widespread that was formed in 1928 in Water Environmental Federation. It's a nonprofit organization that is bent on education, has over 36,000 individual members. Recently honored Ms. Perry and received the prestigious Public Officials Award for Water Environment from the Water Environment Federation, an international nonprofit. They present it annually to the public official who's recognized for significant contributions from elected or appointed public officials for clean water legislation, public policy, government service, and any other area of public prominence. I just want to congratulate her.
Thank you. Congratulations. Other announcements?
Yeah, I was really happy to be able to receive the award, and it gave me an opportunity to tell people from across the country about the second wetlands we're building at 54th and Avalon in South Los Angeles. With a large part of it is done with Proposition O money, and it will clean the water. It will be at a 9-acre wetlands park across from a high school and a junior high school, so it'll serve as an outdoor classroom, and it does exactly what Prop O intended it to do. So thanks, Mr. Parks, for sharing that.
Okay. Thank you. Congratulations. Any other announcements?
But that deal on Heron Bell?
If not, do we have any adjourning motions today?
In the next year?
If there are no adjourning motions, then Sorry. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. All right. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. We'll next be in session tomorrow at 10 a.m., Wednesday, October 26, 2011. Have a great day. Courage.